And so one of the things I want to do is first is just give you a sense from the entrepreneur standpoint, what does that really mean? You know, we think about starting a company and in particular, you know, the founders, right? The people who have that original vision and really take that leap. And so one of the things, just so people understand, Virginia, can you really briefly just tell us a little bit more about Sylvatex and the story, and specifically, you know, we know you're working in the biofuel space, and you know, when was the company founded? How many people are in your team now? And sort of what's sort of the next milestone that you're working towards?
So where I got to, where we're at, and where we're going. Just really quick. The company, what we have is a fuel technology that allows for low-cost renewable components to blend together, to then blend into petroleum-based products. So pretty much we blend in renewable, like ethanol, into diesel fuel to make it burn cleaner. And it's lower cost. So I work with oil guys and I work with renewable guys, and we work higher upstream. So you probably don't know about us at all at the consumer level. You're probably wondering how I got into this business, which is what most people ask. And it came from a technology that my late father developed. He spent about 15 years in the renewable. He spent his career in biofuels, developed this technology the later part of his life. His passing away sort of spawned me to realize that something he worked his entire life on was going to go with him to his grave unless I carried it on. So I quickly shifted gears from my lucrative medical device his past and became an entrepreneur about 2 years ago. Learned how to be an entrepreneur, did every potential accelerator program out there to speed up the process and figure that out very quickly. And then surrounded myself, most importantly, by an amazing network of people here in the Bay Area, which is just so warm and welcoming. Raised a small seed round, which has gotten us to a path to market, which is exciting. So we're at pretty early stages. No immediate exit in sight, but we're right at that verge of getting to revenue, which is sort of unheard of in my industry.
One of the things that's interesting, when you look at the Sylvatex website and you look at Virginia's bio, she ends her bio by saying, "It is my duty to commercialize this technology so it can benefit this planet and all of its people." That's a pretty bold statement, right? Talk about passion. Speaking of passion, let's talk about Pilar Manchon, who I met in the summer of 2012. She was from Spain and participating in a very intensive graduate studies program. And while that was going on, she also happened to be negotiating a deal on the side and raising money for her company, which she recently sold to Intel. And so Pilar's had this really interesting journey in that she's come from Spain to now base here in the Valley as part of that acquisition. There's a headline about the acquisition that says, Intel acquires natural language processing startup Indices, name of her company, to bolster perceptual computing efforts. So Pilar, tell us a little bit about and more in terms of, you know, when did you found Indices? And you know, catch us up to where you were in 2012, and then how big the team was, and how much money you'd raised, and what you were doing just about a year ago.
Okay, and only in 30 seconds, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm Spanish, like Sandy said, and we founded the company in Spain. We're a spin-off from a university research team in Spain. And it's very unusual because there isn't that much high tech coming out from the south of Spain. So one of the main questions that we got when we were raising money was like, Seville? Isn't that a place to go for tourism and things like that? Is there a university there or something? So yeah, there was a lot of disbelief. But yes, we do have some artificial intelligence going on there. And it turned out that we put together a really nice team of people. And we ended up working out some technology that had ended up being top of the market. In terms of natural language processing and dialogue management, which is basically conversational interfaces. So the market is really hot now. All the big companies, you're probably hearing a lot about Siri, right? Everybody heard about Siri. Yeah. So everybody's really interested in getting these intelligent agents that are able to have conversations with human beings and actually make sense out of what we say, being weird, the way we talk and all that, right? So that's what we do. And it turned out that Intel identified us after, a very, very bumpy adventure in the south of Spain. And as Sandy said, I came here in the summer of 2012, and at the same time I was pitching to look for money. We closed a round of funding. We closed for a total of $5 million, more or less. Intel was a lead investor, and to our surprise, 3 or 4 months after we closed the investment, we actually got an acquisition offer that was tempting and exciting enough for us to say yes to. And now the whole team is part of Intel. So we're all working there. The whole team is still in Spain. We were 20 people. We're still 20 people. But now I'm the only one who's here, and it's a new challenge. It's a very different adventure altogether. But I must say that we're very happy and excited to be part of a larger team now and having gone through all that.
Great, thank you. So Tara, the Goldhirsh Foundation, can you talk to us a little bit more about what is the Goldhirsh Foundation focused in? I mean, you have this really fascinating background because you've been both in, senior management positions in Fortune 500 companies, and you also have, with Good, you have this social enterprise, for lack of a better word, background as well. And so talk to us about how that aligned with Goldhirsh.
So I was on the founding team of Good, which is where I met Ben Goldhirsh, and I had made a shift. I actually started my career up here in Silicon Valley working for 2 search engines, InfoSeek and Snap.com. InfoSeek was acquired by Disney. Snap.com was acquired by NBC. Both are no longer in existence. And I remember having a dinner party, and someone from a local venture capital fund, we were going around the table, and someone said, "What's the most interesting company you're hearing?" And this one woman said, "Oh, there's this little company called Google." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting, but I like my search engines." Nonetheless, I made a switch to social enterprise and got started in that actually up here at the New Schools Venture Fund, but was working with Good and left Good to start a family, but really made a commitment that I was going to stay in the social impact space, especially in the social impact space that was very professional, where I have an MBA and where I felt like I could use that language, where I wasn't necessarily having to be in the front lines, being an activist or whatnot, but I could be supporting those people. So the Goldhirsh Foundation funds social innovation in Los Angeles mostly, around activation, which is digital tools and media and any sort of way of mobilizing or empowering people to get involved in pro-social action. So we were an early investor in Kiva, an early funder of Donors Choose. We actually made a grant to MTV a few years ago. We were a little ahead of our time to fund a pro-social platform. And it was a little unusual for us to do that because MTV is a for-profit, and most foundations for the most part really have to fund nonprofits. We also fund sustainability issues and also opportunity around educational and economic opportunity. We've made some impact investments from our endowment, Singularity being one of the recipients, and we've also launched this initiative to come up with a visioning project for the future of Los Angeles called LA 2050. So I've made that shift. I'm committed to staying in that shift, especially because these lines are blurring a little bit. That we use a lot of social media and a lot of communications tools with our nonprofits. So we believe in the power of brand and communication to help people convey a compelling story about some sort of a social ill, but we don't have to be the ones actually, serving the soup at the soup kitchen or whatnot. So that's really quick. But
Great. So Darya, let's hear from you about Broad Circle and perhaps more relevant for this audience, a newer initiative that you're working on called Chick Launcher. How did that happen, and what's sort of the next steps with Chick Launcher?
I have a day job, and Broad Circle and Chick Launcher are my hobbies and my evening avocations. But in my day job, I work in finance and had been working with companies that were going public, many of them out here. I was in executive rooms, seeing not a lot of women in those rooms, very familiar and fluent in the statistics for women that haven't really changed for the last 15 years. Only 7% of venture-funded companies are led by CEOs. For the last 15 years, the trend line for women CEOs has been flat at 15%. It hasn't moved up. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I calculated that at the rate of change, my daughter would be 42 before we'd be 50-50 in the boardroom, in the CEO suite, in the venture capital-funded space. So I decided that I was going to gather 2,500 of my girlfriends in Los Angeles, women that are CEOs, corporate executives, leaders in their professional circles, so that we could get together and we could drive revenue and grow capital for each other. Out of that came a desire to find women that are building high growth business models in our community and to connect with them and see if we can be something of the ecosystem that Kay has so expertly created with Springboard for the women in our community who are trying to change the capital and revenue paradigm for women. I just felt that we needed an acceleration of the trend line, and the way to do that is to support entrepreneurism.
Great. So what I would like each of you to do, when, in particular, thinking about the wonderful women who are pitching here and these really exciting companies, and then and relative to your different perspectives, I'd like you to just speak to a piece of advice for the entrepreneurs based on some of the entrepreneurs that you're funding, that you're seeing in Chick Launcher, for example, and to both of you as entrepreneurs who are sort of a few steps further down the path than some of the folks on the stage, as well as what do you think investors or advisors, what's sort of the one thing they should understand about some of the entrepreneurs and startup companies that you're seeing that they may not fully appreciate yet. So I think, Tara, I'm going to start with you, and then Darya will have you.
I've been really impressed with, I think everyone has been really impressed with the people who've been up on the stage. I'm very impressed. I would say that being even clearer and more simple in your message and delivery, and then also talking about distribution channels, how not only your own kind of personal networks and distribution channels you're going to get out and try to seek funding and follow on funding, but then what about your products? That was one thing that I kept coming back to. And then another thing is we have made some kind of risky grants and investments, and I like hearing about failures and knowing kind of the dirty laundry of what's going on behind the scenes, and that's the best way for me as a funder to be a partner. So I would say be open about your mistakes and where you think you need some growth.
Okay, how about you, Darya?
You know what? I've actually been impressed with the pitches here, and I have the good fortune of being in a place where I can hear a lot of pitches too. So that's all good. I kind of have more macro advice and thoughts for you. I think most of you have, crossed that divide. But I think that based on my experience, there is a fundamental bias in a lot of circles against women that raise their hand for risk and want to try to build businesses. So instead of thinking it's not there, understand that it is there, arm yourself for it, and conquer it. I was telling Sandy a story about, I moderated a panel of people who run tech transfer offices at universities, and I said, of your licensees, of your startups, how many are women? None were women. And I said, well, so of your student body and faculty, how many are women? There were quite a few women nowadays in that number. How many are creating patents that could be licensed? A good ratio. And I said, so why do you suppose the women who are so brilliant, who are creating patents, who could come through the tech transfer office to become entrepreneurs, are not stepping up? And the person in a forum like this said, the women like initiative, right? So what does that tell you? I'm a different ethnicity. In my mind, as I was moderating this panel, I said to her, what if she said Persians like initiative, right? Everybody in the room would have been up in arms. But she said these women like initiative, right? And to me, that communicated not that the women liked initiative, but that there was a bias, and perhaps the women lacked the ecosystem that Kay has tried to build with Springboard.
Great, thank you. So Virginia and Pilar, let's talk about fundraising and pitching. And you get told no a lot. You're trying to communicate how much your incredibly dedicated teams have accomplished, and you're trying to get people to see your vision. What are some of the lessons that you can share from that experience so far for both of you? Why don't we start with you, Virginia?
Well, first off, I've never really heard no. It's just good job. Look forward to what you create. People don't really say no, so it's not really that. It's a soft rejection. It doesn't hurt that bad. But one of the things I feel very strongly about, we've had the good fortune of having amazing women investors early on. So I was actually just thinking about when I was driving here, majority of my investment has come from women. A majority of my board of directors is women. Majority of my team is women. I probably have the opposite problem that most companies have. The majority of my advisors are men, so I'm okay
So
there.
is that typical with energy startups?
Not at all. Not at all. You usually, so I'm usually the only woman in the room at a lot of places, so it's pretty amazing. But having the female, having the early stage female investors, we were also one of the first investments for a lot of women in energy at all. And so I think it's been a humongous support because they're not only just investors, but they're huge mentors. And my biggest piece of advice is surround yourself by really good people and get good money when you're starting off because you're going to need it. It's not the dollars that count, but if you get it from the right person, it goes a lot further.
Great. And Pilar, you've been, you were negotiating for funding from venture as well as corporate investors. So talk about your experience with that and how you navigated that. What were some of the things that you were seeing as you were here in the Valley and having those interactions? And, I think Virginia's comment was interesting about I wasn't really told no. And it was never, and it's sort of interpreting the feedback and understanding, okay, what do I do next? When do I follow up? Those things. So talk about it from your experience.
Well, in my experience, you have to take into account that personality does count a lot. And I am a very forward kind of person. So I did not just take, oh, good job, thank you very much. It's like, so I see you're not engaged. What's going on here? So I would just dig into things when I was talking to an investor to see, well, if there was real interest. If there was no real interest, there is no reason to make us waste the time. But also, if they were not interested, what was it that was not interesting? I mean, was it the business? Was it me? Was it the passion? Was it the team? Was it the market? What was it? So in every single pitch, I tried to find out a little more about that. And one of the most interesting feedbacks I got was that the most convincing piece of my pitch was actually the fact that I could convey that I was totally convinced and full head in the business. And if there was any way that could be made to work, I was going to do it. So I might not be the most intelligent or the most valuable or the most whatever, but I was definitely determined to do that. And they sensed that. So I think that passion is one of the most important ingredients to convince people, to bring them on board, and to see that you are fully committed to what you're doing.
Great, thank you very much. So, so the one thing I'm curious about, Pilar, just to follow up on that, is how exactly, because with all the startups that I advise, how they would actually do the next steps to get the feedback that you just spoke to. Can you talk about that in detail? Was it at the end of the meeting? Was it email? Was it following up? How would you get that level of engagement? Because a lot of entrepreneurs don't do that. They don't use that opportunity to get the feedback. And the investors happily let them get away with that, right? So what was your actual way to make that happen, to do that differently?
Well, I was very insistent on the one hand, and it could be a combination of all those things. So if I saw in the meeting that the person, you see the body language, you're pitching, and 30 seconds into the pitch, you see whether the person is excited or is falling asleep or is like another one, right? So, depending on whether you're able to change that into a more positive attitude or not, I was just engaging with the person to say, okay, so what is it I'm missing? What is it that you're looking for? So I would even interrupt my own pitch to find out what was going on if I was reading that the body language was in the right one. In some cases, I could not read the body language. They were kind of opaque to me. So I was waiting for some feedback, and I was like probing. It's like, so how did I do? Are you interested? Am I not wasting my time here? Am I going to? So I was and some of them were not very responsive. So I would follow up with email after that. And then some people were actually trying to be politically correct, like, yeah, very good business, but we're not going to invest. But, you go into that and you say, okay, why? Is it not that you're not looking for this kind of, is it that you're not convinced about the size of the market? And I would just make very specific questions that were very hard to avoid. So if they would not give me the answer themselves, I would just give them answers myself to see whether they could at least provide that feedback. I was very persistent.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. I know you were.
So I may add on to that just real fast.
Yeah.
One other tip that we've used that works pretty well is usually you have warm intros right, to some of the investors you're meeting with. So usually the person who gave you the warm intro has a little bit more of a just a little bit more casual relationship with the person that you just pitched to. And so if you have a relationship with that person, you could just say, hey, can you follow up with them and just ask them off the cuff how I did, what their thoughts were. And that's been
Very good.
really helpful because you get really good feedback.
That's a very good technique as
You know,
well.
one thing as well that was really helpful for me was that sometimes you do make a personal connection, even though the investor or the business angel is not into your business. And then you can actually use that in the good sense to basically follow up and invite them for coffee. It's like, you know, I know you're not going to invest, but would you have lunch with me and at least give me your feedback and guide me and look for advisor, look for mentorship, look for, you know, all kinds of information. Like I did interview with a lot of venture capitals that it turns out were not in the range of investment that I was looking for, but they gave me extremely valuable advice as to how other investors would actually disqualify projects off the bat.
That's great. And I think that's, of course, yeah.
I just want to add one thing. If this is to spark something, but it just I actually say no a lot to people even before I meet with them. I just say no. However, if you do want to meet still, but I'm just going to say no, but because I know I need to say no. But I'm very interested in if I do think that there's a valuable idea there, or that there's a wonderful leader, or that there's a strong potential and it's not a fit for us, I make an introduction. And I think and also you need to know that if you're going to give feedback to someone, they will receive it and incorporate it and not take it personally. And so it is hard to, it is hard to gauge, is this going to be received poorly or be politically incorrect, or is this going to, impugn my reputation? But I do try, and I think, and that's what we try with the foundation, to make sure that if it's not right for us, if we see that there's value in it, we are going to make an introduction.
Very good. Well, I can't think of a better way to end this panel. I think we're going to have some incredible networking after we have yet another 5 amazing pitches from these companies. We've heard about the importance of not only money capital, but social capital. We have some real experts here on our panel and judges and in the room of social capital as well. So with that, thank you so much, and let's see the companies. Ian?